And I love how that button loves to cover itself up. Welcome, everyone, to the pre-show fun. And welcome to another exciting episode of The Energy That Surrounds Us. I'm your host, Michael. And tonight I have the honor and privilege and blessing to bring an amazing guest to you all who, ironically enough, is an author. And I do have two of her books I'm going to shamelessly plug. There's the book about the moon's galactic history and the Encyclopedia of Angels. If you ever want to look up angels, that is a great source book. And now that I've probably made her feeling like, what an intro, I'm going to turn it over to my guest to introduce herself, the one, the only, the amazing, talented Constance Victoria Briggs.
Thank you. What a nice introduction. I want to say thanks for having me here. It's lovely to be on your show, Michael.
Well, thank you. And thank you for agreeing to come on.
So you want me to introduce myself? I am, as you see, Constance Victoria Briggs. I am an author and a researcher on galactic history, cosmic mysteries. I like delving into things that are obviously mysterious and unusual, and I like to seek answers. I don't like being in the dark. My books are triggered from my own experiences in life with various, I guess you could say, paranormal topics. So I've been on that side of the coin. And I have a huge interest in the idea that we are not alone in the universe, that, there's someone else out there. We're being visited. That is these days, that is my passion and my heart. And I enjoy sharing what I've learned with others, thus my galactic books.
So, in full transparency, when I mentioned the Encyclopedia of Angels book, you mentioned that was your first book backstage.
Yeah.
What was it that drew you to write that book and to gather all that information, and how did you gather it all?
Yeah, so that is a very interesting story. I was living single in my 20s, living alone in an apartment complex, a high-rise building. And I started having issues with an entity in my apartment. It was creating a bit of havoc and scaring me to death. I was not used to anything like that. I had not yet started my research, even though I will say I had some experiences, but nothing negative like this was. I mean, I would go to bed and something was pulling my covers and it was, shaking the bed or, and I could just feel, the presence all the time. So I was on a mission to get rid of it. I didn't know what it was. And so, yeah, I started trying to figure out, what to do. This led me, to make a long story short, it led me to angels. Uh, I literally at that time, I went to a church to try to get help, and they tried to convert me because I thought maybe a church could help. I went to my auntie, who was sort of a little bit, I thought, psychic, but she said, "Are you sure it wasn't someone? Is it some kind of protector?" And I was like, "No, no, no, Aunt, it's not a protector." So I didn't get help from her. So that's why I started doing my own research, ended up in a bookstore, and started reading about the angels, learned to call on angels, learned to call on the 4 archangels names, learned to create, I guess, what you could call a little altar, kind of, not for worship, but a little like it was wooden, and I put angel statues on it, and just to have the presence of the angels, in my home. And I learned to use names, and and at one point it just got really bad. And I said, where are my angels? And I understand everybody has angels, everybody has protectors, everybody has guardians. Where am I? And everything stopped. So most of that information in the book came from my experience of learning about the angels. And being a writer, I was more of a kind of a reporter at the time, for a city paper, and I wanted to write a book. And I just started collecting information and putting it in files for one day when I would be able to write a book about angels. And so that book is the result of the research I did on angels way back then. It took me years before I ever wrote the book. I had gotten married and had a kid, had gotten married, and I finally found the time to put that book together. But that's where the angel book came from.
Very cool. And
Yeah.
I had to admit, I kind of was like, as you were talking, I could have swore until you mentioned child, I could have swore I heard like a little girl giggle or something while you were talking. And I was like, I wonder if that's spirit or if somebody walked by and maybe
Oh,
giggled. But
yeah. No little kids in here anymore. I'm an empty nester now.
well, congratulations on that.
Thank you. On the book or the empty
Oh,
nest. But you know what? I have to say, I mean, I didn't hear anybody giggle, but I'm going to tell you, Michael, I was on a show a few weeks back, and this has never happened to me before, but something manifested while I was on the show, and we literally had the show to prove it. It's like, it was this orb in I for lack of a better word, we don't know what orbs are, right? It was
right.
white and it materialized here, and I was like, did the camera get it? And it kind of came and it went behind me and it flew back, and you could see it on the show. So, after that experience, I'm like, who knows what can happen, right?
Right. And, we are a paranormal show. So,
Right? We didn't know what was going on, but I got it on film anyway.
yeah. And hopefully, others may have heard it too. And if not, then I'll say it was just for me. And I'm happy I heard it. And
Interesting.
I'm also curious too, is So you went from angels to writing about paranormal experiences and turned into galactic history of the moon, the Earth. How did that path happen? Like, did you just go, maybe these angels are something more than what we think, and that brought you there, or was it an experience?
So, my entire life, I've had an interest in what is going on in outer space. Are we alone or not? I was as a child, I was a huge fan of a show called Lost in Space. I remember coming
I
home and just,
love that
oh
show.
my God, coming home to watch that. I don't know whatever made my mother turn it on for me because she was not into any of this stuff. But I love, and in fact, I'm rewatching it now. As crazy as that might sound, I am rewatching. I got the whole series anyway, reliving those young days. Anyway, I was also a fan of Star Trek, the original
Oh yeah.
series, right? And so I followed that my entire life. That is all has always been a passion, and just a feeling of a connection out there. But I can't say that it was a part of the paranormal path. Okay, these are two separate things that was going on with me. The paranormal stuff is just, I think it's there for everybody. I don't think it singled me out, some of the things that were going on. But one of my first experiences occurred when I was 14 years old. I was one of those kids that was bullied, and I tried to, commit suicide, buy pills, and I was laying on the floor, and what looked like a swirling cloud appeared before me, and it dissipated. And when it opened, it dissipated. There was someone standing there in a white a gown. I guess it was a gown. In my memory, it looks like a high collar white gown, right? And and he was beckoning me to come, and he looked very worried, very concerned. This was before I learned about angels. I was 14. And he looked, and I tell you, if I had raised up to go towards him, I probably wouldn't be here today, because whomever it was feeling clearly badly for me, was worried about me. And, maybe they just wanted me to come home. They thought maybe, she's had enough there, because, kids get bullied in school. I was bullied a lot because I was a
Right.
quiet, thin, young, kid. Anywho, so it disappeared. He disappeared. So that was one of my main experiences. But I didn't think it was an angel. I just thought, wow, this is what happens when you take pills. But what's interesting is that many years later, by the time I had started studying entities and extraterrestrials out there, because we do have information coming in from people who have conversations with extraterrestrials, who have had contact, who have been visited, and some of them have channeled them. And one lady was channeling one group, and I'm wondering today, to this very day, if the people she was channeling had anything to do with what I saw, because on one of her books is the face of a man that looked very much like the person I saw, in a high white collar, and in front of him is a swirling cloud. And it always made, so when I discovered that, I thought, wow, when I learned about ETs, could that have been an ET? Because what led me to her was a book put out by a gentleman by the name of Scott Mandelaker. Everybody, if you want to look him up, the book is called From Elsewhere. And he did, I guess it was his college thesis on people on Earth who believe that they have come from other worlds and were born into Earth for various purposes and reasons. And one of the people in the book named this star being, I don't want to say entity, star being. And in her description, she said there was a swirling cloud that opened and he was standing there. So I'm trying to connect that with my experience, her experience, and then the lady who wrote the book. when this lady in the book gave, and from elsewhere, gave the name of the star person, the lady who was channeling also gave the same name. So I just wonder if sometimes what we're thinking, we're seeing with angels could actually be not necessarily the angel, but a star being. There are many things going on, is what I've learned out there and in the unseen. All right. But to get back to your question, what put me on this path? How did I get on this path? So I was, living, going back to where I was living. I was living, by the way, in Alexandria, Virginia. If anybody's out there from Alexandria, I was living right there near Old Town Alexandria, near the Woodrow Wilson Bridge. And so I went from writing angels to years later having astral experiences, astral projecting, becoming conscious when I was astral projecting. And my first time I woke up, I was consciously projecting over the Woodrow Wilson Bridge right by my apartment. And I was looking down on the cars crossing it. So that was another piece to my paranormal journey. And then, as I'm studying more and more now, I've become so interested in the angels and life after death and astral projection. When what prompted my next book, because I did one on God, but I'm going to just skip over it because it was basically an encyclopedia of who and what God might be from different cultures and religions. But after that, I did the Encyclopedia of the Unseen World and dedicated it to my father, because by now I'm in my late 20s, and my father, well, no, my mid 30s, and my father passed away. And my father, who he lived in Virginia, had moved to San Diego and California, and he had never been to my house. But when he passed away, he made himself known in my house. And, so I dedicated the book to him, because he not only the way he made himself known was by the typical stuff you hear. He would turn off on lights and appliances. Strange lights would appear after his passing. One time, he turned on a light, and when the first time he turned on the light, and I went to see what caused the light to go out, and I noticed that literally the plug, the outlet had been pulled from the wall for this lamp. So he did a whole lot of things to let us know, my husband and I know he was there. I dedicated that book to him. And so that book, was along this journey, this path. And since, one day we'll have to do a show on it, Michael, I've had some other experiences that would take up the whole time. So by the time I wrote about and talked about these things, I was also doing my research into what I love about, like I said, who's out there, what's out there. And, many years have gone by where I've studied the origins of humankind, and I've tried to, tie in everything I've learned about, out there and in the galactic, in the universe. And I try to put it into books to show people what I've learned and to help them to, maybe learn a little something if they're interested.
No, that's
I
great.
hope I
And
answered that well.
you did. And
God.
one of the things I was going to mention earlier, talking about Lost in Space, that, with the show and everything, was I wonder if I'm the only one that thought about this, but the ship was called Jupiter 2.
Mm.
Whatever happened to 1? And was there ever more? It's like, what was significant at Jupiter 2 for this
Mm.
show?
Yeah, I don't know. I'm trying to remember the introduction now. Did they mention there was a Jupiter 1? I can't remember.
Well, if you watch the movie that they made fairly recently,
Yeah, I didn't watch it. Mm.
they showed that there was 2, and the first one was destroyed
Oh,
for
goodness.
some reason,
Mm-hmm.
and so 2 was out there. But I was like,
Mm.
I always felt like, yeah, I don't think so. But when we watch shows, there's always like when there's like ships that are named something, there's always a reason and a significance. I found like Star Trek, Enterprise. There was a
Hmm.
reason the ship was called the Enterprise. There was a reason it was 1701 and that never changed. And so, but and the dynamic of the crew of Lost in Space to me was always interesting because you had the professor who was trying everything he could to get away from them or take over. It could never fully do it. The robot that turned on him, that became the boy's friend, and the daughter with the single guy who was the navigator or pilot, the mom and dad, and then the one sister. So it was like there was always an odd number to the family.
Hmm. Yeah, but what a great show.
It
And what a
was.
great introduction for people who, at that time, would have been like myself and had an interest in what could be going on out there, right? Yeah,
Right.
I thought he
And
did a good job.
the thing that I liked about it too, like with Star Trek, was they would go to worlds and somehow they could fix the ship to go somewhere else, or other people were coming where they were. And it would
Hmm.
always be this dilemma that is like rose to the best of humanity to solve it. And it was like, oh, that is so, it was like space drama that could have literally been dropped anywhere on the earth and would fit with what was
Hmm.
going on.
Yep. Yep. Agreed. What's interesting is that in my research, it's my understanding that one of the ways we are being educated for what will be essentially a mass first contact, or you can call it disclosure if you want. But one of the ways we're being educated is through the media and through our movies and our TV shows and our books. That this is a slow form of disclosure. There's a very interesting story about Gene Roddenberry, who was the creator of Star Trek and who, as he worked with it, he also came up with scripts. Well, he was apparently sitting in channeling sessions with a woman who was channeling a group of extraterrestrials. And the extraterrestrials were told her that they are, out in the universe, of course, and they are near Earth, and they are traveling. Their job is to travel, and they are a peacekeeping mission, and that the crew is made up of people from different worlds, and they get along very well. Now, Roddenberry is said to have been sitting in on these meetings, and the idea is that he created Star Trek from those sessions. The idea came to him, or it was given to him, or, maybe it was always his mission to be there so that he could take the information and put it out to the masses. Because it's Star Trek that most people, well, in the beginning, I mean, we've got Star Wars too now, of course, that's very popular. But Star Trek is the one that has the show that has opened people's minds the most about what could be going on, in our galaxy, in outside of our galaxy. So I find that to be a very interesting story. And then you've got some of the other movies that have come along that are so interesting and have, a lot of science fiction has opened people's minds. And so when people hear about the UFOs out there, or they hear about the tic tacs, that the government is talking about, they've got some inkling, at least, of the idea that maybe there's someone else out there.
Right. And and Roddenberry, it was interesting too that not only that, but he would sit there and be like, what are some of the issues in the world right now? And then he would come up with a way of working it into the show. And one of the shows that they said was his favorite, that most people pay no attention to really, was the one with where the guy had the white on one side, black on the other, and he was on the run. And they were like, "Why are you on the run?" He goes, "Because of my face." And he goes, "What do you mean?" Well, with his being white here, the people that were chasing him were black and white. And because he was different and the colors were reversed,
Mm-hmm.
they were trying to eliminate him. And he said that was, he thought, the most powerful message to people was to say, just because there's a slight difference doesn't make you less than who you are. And so, and he was like, that was one of, he thought, the most powerful episodes. And he was so glad he got to write it.
Yeah,
And
I can see it in my head right now. Those guys, there's two of them
yeah,
that I'm seeing, and they're hugging each other. I can't remember, yeah, the storyline, but I can see those costumes. I
yeah.
remember.
And
Interesting.
the thing with it too is Star Trek that most people don't know is it was canceled. The sets were pretty much almost destroyed. And so the fans wrote in and were demanding that it be brought back. And so they were sitting there going, okay, do we rebuild the sets or do we go to motion picture? And they decided, let's go to motion picture. And I feel like where I'm at now, I get the first movie oddly named The Motion Picture
Mhm.
being the storyline that it was going, when I first watched it, I was like, okay, so a probe is looking for its creator. Okay, whatever. But now I realize, wait a minute, this was us reaching out, and this is the answer that came back. And it's looking for its creator, but it doesn't know it was a group of people. It's thinking it's an individual, and the power of the person who ends up joining with to take the place is not the person you thought, because it wasn't the creator, but it went and showed anybody can do this and anyone can step up. And I was like, that was really cool. And that's the thing about like Star Trek, Lost in Space, Star Wars, Dune, all of those is when you first watch them, you're like, okay, yeah, I see this, the science fiction part of it. But then as you go back and watch it more and more, you're like, wait a minute, this is starting to look like today, where we are now. And the messages, even though they were airing in the 60s or the 80s or, whenever, still fit today as much as when they were created. And I think that's the true magic of those shows, is how they were able to pull that off.
I think that I agree with you, and I think they're still pulling it off, but what's unfortunate is that the young people today are not familiar with those stories or those shows that much.
No,
And so I feel like we have to keep them out there. We have to keep the conversation going. I think that they are a gift to us, and like I said, to inform us of what is possibly going on out there and what actually could be our future. So, my books are designed to, I keep telling people in the book, think out of the box, keep talking about it. There's a lot going on in our world that we can't explain. There's a lot going on in our skies. What is it? Don't just, say, oh, someone saw a UFO and say, oh, that's interesting. Who's operating them? How does it affect us? How does it affect our future? How does it affect Earth? Who are they? Why are they here? There are a lot of questions to be answered. And the thing is, there's more and more activity. Even if you're not seeing it in your personal life, you might know someone who has. I have a friend who told me, Constance, you go down such and such a place and they're all over you see them, they're all over the place. They're flying all over the sky. I've seen them several times. So just because one person doesn't see them doesn't mean they're not there. People say, I don't believe in UFOs. I don't believe in extraterrestrials. We have too much evidence that there's something going on. There's too many people saying that they've seen things and have contact. And the history goes back to ancient times. I was just I was trying to think of some of the things if we got into my latest book here. What was I going to tell you about? Well, one of the things I was just reading was Egypt, ancient Egypt. There was a mass UFO sighting in ancient Egypt, and they wrote it down. So, these things have been, out there since the beginning of our history, but we're seeing more and more of them. And the question is why. And I think we should be having, we used to say having town meetings. Well, we don't have town meetings, but we can have Zoom meetings, right?
Right.
Everybody should be talking about this because we don't know what's going on and we don't know what's going to happen in the future. But it looks like anytime you see, and this is just my opinion, nobody has to, listen to it. But if you see the stepping up of activity of something like, more and more UFOs, then, maybe something's going to happen. Maybe there will be a first contact. When I say first contact, I mean a mass contact. We have had first contact many times over. Like I said, people have been reporting not just UFOs, but ET contact. So I think we've had that first contact and, but we haven't had it with the masses, which is why so many people don't believe it yet. So,
Right.
yeah, I don't think we should be complacent when it comes to something that's showing up in our skies. I think we should be trying to understand it.
Right. And it's kind of funny, when I think about, how you just made me think about this is like Star Trek. We're taught the prime directive: do not interfere with a civilization's growth. That's their number one rule.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like if they're pre warp, do not show yourself beaming in, shuttling, or the
Mm-hmm.
ship because that could leave damage to their growth. And I look at all the UFO sightings and I'm like, I'm so glad our ET brothers don't have prime directive because we are so not a warp society to where we can go from our planet to another planet in mere minutes or hours like they can, that we know of. I'm going to put that little caveat on that we know of. And so it's like, and I had a friend who my parents studied with, and I studied some with her too. And to kind of piggyback on what you were saying about how some people will never see the UFO, she actually said, because somebody asked her, why doesn't everybody see what's in the skies? Why is it only certain people? And she goes, so take, say, 10 people in a room, and there's a parking lot outside, and a UFO comes down and is hovering, say, 10 feet off the ground. 5 people who are dead, not going to believe, walk out and are like, it's an empty parking lot. I don't know what y'all are so, in awe about, and will go about their day. The other 5 that are remaining, some are on the fence,
Mm-hmm.
some are believers, and they'll be out there, and the believers are like, hey, look at this UFO. That is really beautiful. Look at the detail. Look at the color. And the people that are on the fence are like, I see something blurry. I can't really make out what it is, but there
Mm-hmm.
is something there. But I can't say for sure it's a UFO. And the beauty of it, she said, was all 10 are right. It's because that's where they are in their life. Their filters determine what they will see. So as we're sitting here and we're saying, my God, there's UFOs all over the place. How are you not seeing it? It's not that our job isn't to make people see them. Our job is to maybe find a way where they're like, become more of the fuzzy people, where they're like, there is something there. And maybe that'll lead to them seeing it. But that's on them, not you. And so that's where I think a lot of times a lot of the rift in the communities comes from is people want everyone to believe and want everyone to believe their experiences. And that's not what we're supposed to be doing. We're just supposed to be sharing the information when people are ready. It's like that adage, when the student is ready, the teacher will appear. Well, think of it this way: when people are ready to experience the UFOs or a star being or whatever, when they're ready, they're going to find these shows where we were talking about it months ago or years ago or days ago. And they're going to be like, hey, and reach out to you and be like, I want to know more.
Yeah.
That's the beauty of what we do,
Yeah.
is to plant those seeds. And with that, I'm curious, what got you to write a book on the history of the moon?
Oh my God. Yeah, that's a loaded question, actually. I'm going to have to make a long, long story short. So I guess when I was, you know, I loved the idea that there were benevolent beings out there. I never had a doubt in my mind that we were being visited and there were UFOs, right? I felt like some of the UFOs that were here, talking about the prime directive, I felt like they shouldn't be, and that there might be some cheating aliens out there. And because I don't believe that they were supposed to be showing themselves the way, this was many years ago, they were. So I said, I wonder, if there are good extraterrestrials, bad extraterrestrials. And I was coming across information about, good ones. And I said, well, I'm going to look for them. Who are the good ones? Somehow, I don't know what I read, but somehow it came across my desk a story about the moon. And I know that some people, think that, there are, maybe the moon has spirits around it. All planets have spirits. Anyway, long story short, that trail of looking for good ETs led me to a book. Came across my desk. Someone gave it to me, called Our Mysterious Spaceship Moon. And I thought, what is that? It never occurred to me that there was anything going on with the moon. And, for whatever reason, this person thought that in my extraterrestrial studies, maybe I'd find something in there. I didn't find anything about benevolent beings, but oh my God, did it trigger me? Did it open my eyes to strange happenings on the moon? Yes, it did. Whether or not they're benevolent extraterrestrials there, I still don't know. But there's someone there. There's someone on the moon. I am convinced of that. And so this book was titled Our Mysterious Spaceship Moon, written by a ufologist by the name of Don Wilson. I've looked for this person. I can't find him, but I did dedicate my first moon book. I've written two, the Encyclopedia of Moon Mysteries. I talk about him in the dedication area, and I thank him for opening my eyes, really. So I went from writing, at that time I was writing encyclopedias. I love writing encyclopedias. And but then after I wrote the Encyclopedia of Moon Mysteries, where I talked about what, some of the things Don Wilson had mentioned. And then I went into this huge deep dive of research and found all of this stuff that's going on with the moon. With we've all heard of structures being up there, but there are stories of uh, craft, fleets of UFOs leaving the moon, lights all over the moon, things moving across the surface of the moon, and all this stuff. So when I wrote the Encyclopedia of Moon Mysteries, to answer your question, people wanted more. You know, um, they were asking me to do something else. They wanted a narrative, is really what it came down to. They wanted to hear my voice. They wanted to hear my opinion, because I would go on shows like this and I would talk about it. But they were tired, at least the people who were reading it were, I guess, tired of just reading the entries, which are little articles. It's still it's a worthwhile book, I think. But in the Moon's Galactic History, I go into more detail. I go deeper into who and what might be up there, how they got there, why they're there, the theories as to why there's movement on the moon, why it looks like parking lots of lights sitting on our moon. For those who believe that we went to the moon, and there's a lot that don't, and there's a lot that do. I do, so I talk about it. I go into detail about some of the things that during those missions they came across, and the pictures. I mean, people think it's a hoax, but if it's a hoax, they went through a whole lot of hoax to fake some very interesting pictures to look like there's UFOs up there. So yeah, basically my search for extraterrestrials led me to the moon. And I do believe that there are extraterrestrials there. There are just too much going on up there for someone to not be behind what we're seeing out there.
Right. I agree. And one of the things that I like to point out too, it's kind of like evidence right in our face that we don't pay attention to, is the moon is a sphere, the earth is a sphere. Sorry, flat earthers, but for the point of this conversation, the planet's a sphere. We have satellites all around the planet so we can communicate, right? But when you go to the moon, what's the one thing NASA says? When it hits the dark side of the moon, they lose communication.
Yeah,
Since we were there in 69 to today, no satellites have been placed around the moon to fix that. Why? There's got to be something up there they don't want us to know or to hear. And so to me, it's like, like you're saying, there's ETs up there. To me, that's the only thing that makes sense as to why, if we can make it possible to communicate here, but we won't make it possible to communicate there with the people we sent out there who are putting their lives on the line in space, who can't just pull over and ask directions. It's like, that doesn't make sense to me how that's never been corrected.
Right. But you know what? They all is not hidden. All is not kept from us. I don't know if it slipped through the cracks, some of this stuff. But there was one incident where the first time that one of the Apollo missions went behind the moon, they, for an hour, they were out of communication and they heard something. People have phrased it music, but it wasn't music. It was kind of a woo kind of sound, a kind of a whirring sound, and some of it was staticky. And they called it, the astronauts were referring to it, for lack of better words, I guess, as space music. And they're saying, they've got transcripts of the astronauts and everything they said and did up there, like thousands of pages. And so anyway, but in the transcript, they're saying, should we talk about it? Should we tell them? And people, they're like saying to each other, no, they're going to think we're crazy, because, if you came back and you talked about extraterrestrials or hearing something up there, they were afraid of losing their jobs, right? So they didn't come back. But they found the tapes. Apparently, they were put away, and they found these tapes many years later, and you can hear them on there. There was, and I wonder if there was that was an accident that they were hearing this over their radios, or was there someone on the moon trying to reach them, trying to communicate with them? And it wasn't the first time. There are a couple of stories, and you can find them in my Moon Mysteries encyclopedia, where one of them was Gordon Cooper, I believe it was. There's a lot of astronauts, guys. Sorry, they from the Mercury and Gemini. I get them a little confused sometimes. But one of them heard a foreign language over their radio, and not at the moon, but just above Earth when he was flying around. And then, as one mission got closer to the moon, before they landed, there was someone who picked up a foreign language, and they tried to hide that, but it did leak out into the French press, actually. Anyway, both of these cases, it seemed like someone was trying to communicate. I wonder if when they went behind the moon, that was another time, and they heard these sounds, was that someone trying to communicate with the astronauts.
I like how you put it as them trying to communicate, because to me, with all the stories I've heard of what could possibly be on the dark side of the moon, I was like, to me, I'd be like, they were being warned, we're monitoring you. And so I like your version better, where they're trying to reach out and being
Oh,
friendly and
I
nice.
see. Yeah, no, I just feel like if they wanted to do us harm, they have plenty of opportunity. We put 12 people on the moon surface. All right, now I know we didn't tour, we didn't look at explore, looking for the word explore. We didn't explore that much of the moon. It's less than 1% of the moon that we actually explored, the astronauts
Right.
up there, right? But, nobody bothered them. There was no harm that came to them. I don't necessarily believe that they're trying to do that, to do anything to us. In fact, there are UFOs seen leaving the moon. There is UFOs seen entering crevices on the lunar surface and disappearing. If they have that kind of technology, they could come to Earth and could have, done something, unless they're being blocked, from that, which is another opinion of mine. I do think that Earth is under some kind of protection, but I don't think, given that there were 12 people on the moon, that they wanted to do us any harm. Okay. Now, when I say protection, this is just my theory. Um, I believe that in the galaxy there are many civilizations. There's life all around us, everywhere. There's life on Earth that we don't know is here because we can't see them. We can only, see but so far with our human eyes, right?
Right.
So I don't think it's just here. I think it's out there, and either it's being hidden from us, or we can't see it all of it for whatever reason, or we just, don't know. But I believe they're out there. And I think if we're here and we are at a stage in our development and our technology where we're moving along, but we still can't do our space travel as far as we know. That's another issue. We still can't fly around out there. We don't have the weaponry to protect ourselves from advanced beings in space that may want to do damage on Earth, right? So there's us. There may be worlds behind us that are just beginning and developing, right? And then there could be worlds thousands or millions of years ahead of us with technology. What do you do with the worlds, the newer worlds? Do you just let nefarious beings take over, take charge of a planet? I hear that there are galactic hierarchies out there in the galaxy. From my research, we've got the Galactic Federation we've heard of. We've got the Council of Nine we've heard of. We've got the Ashtar Command we've heard of. Who knows who and what is out there? But I believe that if we have some kind of, ruling here on Earth, we have kingdoms and we have presidents and we have, elections. Why wouldn't there be hierarchies out there? And why wouldn't the hierarchies protect planets with civilizations that don't have the means to protect themselves against some kind of takeover? Now, I say that, but that's just an opinion. Nobody has to take the opinion. It's just something to think about. I always say, think out of the box, right? And then you hear about, asteroids, for example, that are heading towards Earth that somehow have been moved. Have you heard those stories, Michael? That
I
quickly were
have.
moved away? Who did that, right? Who did that? The nuclear weapons on Earth that have been disarmed, that is, they have been documented where UFOs have shown up and disarmed missiles. And it freaks freaks the military out, but it's been done. Who's doing that? Who's trying to save us? They say, oh, they're trying to save us from ourselves. And yes, they may be trying to save us from ourselves, but there's still someone out there making the decision. Hey, you go down there. These primitive beings have now created nuclear weapons. Make sure they don't set them off. Who
Yeah.
made that decision? So I believe that there is someone out there that is making a decision for lesser, beings like ourselves who aren't quite there yet with our space travel. One of my, excuse my computer, I'm sorry. One of my favorite Star Trek episodes is called First Contact, and it is about a time in Star Trek The Next Generation where Picard and Troy go down to a planet that has just made it to warp drive capacity, and they tell them, we come down, we visit societies or civilizations that have reached the ability to go out into space, so they can educate them before they get there that they're not alone in the universe. There's something going on. Now, I can just imagine that there is someone out there making those kinds of decisions. And, we do have stories and rumors about governments, even our presidents, that have been visited by extraterrestrials. Of course, we're not going to have documentation on that, right? So we've got, whistleblowers and rumors, and, we only can put so much together. But if that is true, that would be along the lines, and it totally makes sense that if they are out there and they're advanced, they would approach a society to try to educate them before going out into the universe and trying to colonize. That's
Right.
just a thought.
And one of the things, I was thinking about, as you were talking about how they're moving the asteroids and everything, is when we look at our history, the only time we've had a few asteroids hit our world,
Mhm.
and they've always been in periods where either the dinosaurs were roaming around or there wasn't a lot of life around, because you never hear about, it's not like modern times where this civilization was wiped out. Like, what I mean by that is like the Arizona crater. We say, yeah, there's a huge crater here from an asteroid that hit, but you never hear, well, there was buildings found here or ruins found here a lot in the basin, so these people were hurt. So I would venture to say nobody was hurt by that. And the dinosaurs, if it was an asteroid that took them out, was it someone made a decision of, hey, it's time for these creatures have had their time, they're not evolving the way we were hoping they would, now it's time to let these people try. And so they did a mass shift, and they used the asteroids to sort of, as we would say, keep their hands clean, because you could say, hey, it was natural. An asteroid did it. We didn't do it. But then how many near misses of asteroids have we had lately to where it's like, yeah, something saved us, something protected us, because we don't have many stories now of, oh, the asteroids. We don't have that fear of asteroids now.
And we don't know what else is going on out there. All right. If you go to my the Earth's galactic history, I do talk about hypothesis of how we got here and why we're here, and one of them is that maybe the Earth was terraformed, maybe the Earth was seeded. We call it. It's called direct panspermia, where Earth was targeted to be seeded, and that's how life came here. If that is the truth, then like I said before, there could be someone protecting Earth. So we may not know what else is out there that may have caused this damage, that may have been able to wipe us out, that was thwarted by advanced beings that are out there, protecting us. So, and there's
You make a.
Mhm.
I was gonna say real quick. You make a really good point earlier when you said, if we were to go out there, like we had warp drive, that
Mm.
it was published in public papers. We had achieved warp drive, and then it disappeared, and nobody talks about it anymore. And then, like you were saying, we don't have the weapons that we know of to defend ourselves from space. And I was just thinking about all those stories of UFO crashes where they claim we shot it down. I'm like, wait a minute. If we can't go into space because we can't defend ourselves, how is that ship crashing because of us? And so it makes me wonder now if those crashes were like maybe a rogue group who was like, we really need them to advance, but we can't interfere. And two or three said, we have you covered. We're going to steal this ship. We'll make it look like a crash so nobody will know we purposefully drove this to help them. And we discover the ship, start reverse engineering, start our growth into going into space and looking at space more. And to me, one of the most interesting things too about space travel for us is, again, from 69 to current, we were sending rockets up that would just go and pile up in the ocean or stay in the atmosphere, floating around forever. Nobody thought until now to go, hey, we could bring those back. Then we could go into space a lot faster because we already have the propulsion unit built.
Right.
We could just reuse it. It's like, why did it take a bunch of billionaires to have a competition to figure out we can return the boosters? We can land them, reuse them,
Interesting.
and we can go in half the time now. We just have to build the shuttle instead or make repairs to it.
Hmm.
And it's like, and yet nobody ever questions what NASA's been doing for all these decades, because it looks like on paper they have done nothing.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, it does really make me wonder, though, if those UFO crashes that we all have heard about were really done on purpose, maybe to help us
That's interesting,
through.
Michael.
Because, yeah. So, what do you feel like is? And I know we're at the hour, so I don't know if you have time to go a little bit longer or if you got
Not
to
much.
go.
No, I do have to scoot soon. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I'll just ask one quick question of you then is, you mentioned your new book coming out. So what else do you have coming?
So my book is out, and I'm just going to say it is the Earth's galactic history. And I just want to tell you really quickly, watching the time here myself, really quickly. We were just to get back. We were talking about the Earth being protected. There is information in there about wars in ancient times on Earth where UFOs appeared, and they appear to be helping to try to stop the war. Okay, so if you want to read a little bit more about that, it is in there. Um, yeah, so it wasn't just now that they're trying to help us out. This has been going on for a long time. They're trying to the extraterrestrials seem to be trying to give us time to develop before letting anybody in to try
Right.
to do harm. Now, I mean, we could do a whole other show on some things that have happened on Earth with extraterrestrials that were negative, but I believe that they um, hopefully will pay for some of those for some of that activity. And I'm talking about some of the negative abductions. But so what do I have coming out? I am working on a book, but it is top secret. I don't want to jinx it. This book just came out in December. Gosh, can I show it?
Sure.
It is Earth's galactic history and its extraterrestrial connection. And I do go into some detail, people, about what I think is going on and around Earth from a historical perspective until today. I believe we have been visited, are being visited, and that we are being prepared for we'll call it a spacefaring or Star Trek future. I think the more we learn, the more we are preparing ourselves for that eventuality. We hope it's an eventuality, because if we don't prepare ourselves, we could end up in, a dystopian kind of world, right? So
Yes.
that's the future we want. And by, I don't know, keeping open minds, keeping conversation open, um, I think it helps us to gain knowledge. And I suggest to people, excuse me, to read books. Not, I don't mean my books, okay? I mean, go on, reading my books is fine too, but go on Amazon. Is all kinds of information on UFOs and extraterrestrials. You'll learn about things that are going on that you've never heard before. And you will be, very surprised. Don't be in the dark. There are a lot of people out there, they're like, oh, we need to make a living. We don't have time for this, but this is, a part of, us. This is what's going on around us, even if you haven't had the experience yet. I've had people who contacted me and said, oh, I saw this, or I saw this in my house. What was that? They've seen like some entity or something. Don't be in the dark. Get up to date on things, educate yourself, and read the books. Now, Earth's galactic history, I talk about human origins, the theories that are out there today about our extraterrestrial connections, possibly, with our human origins. It's food for thought. I talk about I already covered this, but extraterrestrials from our past till today. There are extraterrestrial uh, drawings on walls from the caveman times or whatever, of what looks like ships and extraterrestrials. One of them held you could see a craft with extraterrestrials at the top, and they're chasing a herd of animals. That's in my book, and that is from ancient times. So they've been here, they've been around. There are stories of extraterrestrials in our oceans. I talk about USOs, underwater submerged objects. People are seeing UFOs go from the sky into the oceans. Christopher Columbus even talked about it. So they've been around a while. Talk about the possibility of the hollow earth holding extraterrestrials or intraterrestrials. There are beings thought to be in there too. I go into detail about that. I talk about there being water found in the hollow earth. The book goes into signs and signals that we've had from outer space. Yes, it has happened. I have one example from from the NSA who declassified information. It's on their website. You can go there on yourself. You don't have to buy the book to see what they're saying about ETs. I talk about the UFOs. I go into chapter 8, talks about the cosmic freeway, the possibility that extraterrestrials are coming here through portals, all right, and stargates. Yeah, so there's a lot that the book covers. And my last words are do the studying, read the books, watch shows like this, get updated, keep an open mind, and let's just see, what happens in the future with UFOs and extraterrestrials. Very exciting times.
It is. And I have included in the description links to your books and your websites and all your Facebook pages.
Thank you.
You're
It's a lot
welcome.
of them, a lot of stuff.
Yeah,
Yes,
when I
contact
say
me on
Facebook
Facebook.
pages, I mean the pages that you have for the books and all of
Yeah,
that.
yeah,
So,
thank you. I'm easy to find. Constance Victoria Briggs. There's several pages, just like them all. I'm always throwing up information. And I'm getting Instagram started too, at Galactic Briggs. So I'm just getting going on that. Yeah, yeah.
well, there you go. So we will definitely have you on again,
Thank you.
and at least twice from the sounds of it.
Yeah, there's more to say, and I love talking. So I'm sorry that I can't hang around longer.
Oh, no
But
worries.
okay,
I appreciate you coming on and trusting in me because I know we hadn't met in person, so I appreciate you trusting me and coming on the show. So thank you. Thank you to everyone in the chat room. Thank you to everyone who's watching and is going to watch. I appreciate you all. We wouldn't be able to do this without you. So thank you. And again, thank you so much, Constance, for
thanks
coming
for
on
having
and
me.
writing these books.
Thank you.
And I think your new book is gone to the top of my list of books to order.
Let me know what you think of it, Michael.
I will.
Thank you. Okay.
So, from our show to all of you, make it a great day, wonderful afternoon, wonderful evening, sweet dreams if that's what time you are right now. And we will see you on the next episode. Good night, everyone.
Bye.